Hello Longhorn.
Hello Longhorn.
Hello Longhorn.
Let's start with the fact that you came to the University of Texas in the late 80s. Why did you choose UT?
Honestly, I never even had a second choice. Like I didn't have a fallback. I grew up in Houston and I was a huge Earl Campbell fan.
Okay.
Huge Earl Campbell fan.
Man, football is what brings people here.
I can't even tell you how much I loved Earl. And he went to the University of Texas, and so that's pretty much all I considered. And when I got in, I was so happy.
And you did computer science.
I did, but not initially.
Okay, what was initial?
I was actually an aerospace engineer.
Okay.
Initially, and I was a terrible student. I was working a bunch, and I was also pledging, and I had terrible grades, and I literally got kicked out of the aerospace engineering program by the dean after my first semester. He called me up to Austin. He said, "Let's have a conversation, Ron. You're not doing well." And it was really hard to get in. You had to have a congressman. You had to have great grades.
For aerospace engineering?
I had to have a congressman write a letter of recommendation even to get into the program. So I really squandered that opportunity. I look back, it's the best thing that ever happened to me because I transferred into computer science. And I loved computers. The reason I went to it was I'd always loved computers, but and planned on being a computer science major. And so I went into computer science kind of almost involuntarily, but loved it.
What was computer science in the late 80s? Because when I think about that, I was 8. And when you came here, it was like, what, 1988, 1989?
I went into computer science in 89.
Okay, so like I feel like I had an Apple II GS or something along
those lines.
The
Mac had been around.
Okay.
In fact, UT, I worked at the Micro Center here, which was the essentially the place you would go buy computers, and I worked for the help desk. So if you had a problem, you could call up the Micro Center, free hotline. We'd help you fix your printer or whatever it was. But UT sold. Only behind Apple, they sold the most Macintoshes in the world.
Really?
Yeah. We sold so many Macintoshes every day there. Yeah.
And what were you doing in computer science in the late 80s?
So in the late 80s, computer science, I misunderstood. I thought computers were cool. I didn't understand truly how sort of deeply grounded they were sort of theoretically in, information theory and how connected they are to deep questions in math around, knowledge and consciousness and all that sort of stuff that we're hitting upon now within AI. Back then, I thought computers were cool. And so we did a lot of the things that are still a part of our traditional computer science curriculum, things like data structures and understanding algorithms and things like that. But it was much more UT back in the late 80s, early 90s, as now had a spectacular computer science program. So it was elite, it was world renowned. And so when I graduated, it was truly only about 5 years after I graduated that I looked back and realized, what an incredible degree I got. At the time, I didn't appreciate it. But once I was in the workforce, I realized how thorough they had prepared me.
I meant to ask, where did you live freshman year, by the way?
I lived off campus. I lived right off Guadalupe, right off the drag. I heard do they not call it the drag anymore? Somebody told me they don't call it the drag.
I call it the drag. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what do they call it?
It's just Quad now.
Quad, yeah.
Oh.
See?
Oh, Quad. That's what okay.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
So you lived off Quad.
I lived off Quad. And I never lived on campus, but I always lived, first couple of years off close, and then I moved further and further out.
And you were working to help pay for college?
Yes. So the Littlefield building, I love this story. So I got a job at the Littlefield building helping do whatever. And I would come in after class and they would literally have me lick envelopes. They'd be like, here's a stack. I'm not kidding. Like, here are 1,000 envelopes and we'd have to like seal them. And
that taste never goes away.
And that taste never goes away. It was crazy. And we, after a couple months, they started realizing I was proficient with technology. And this is a bunch of old ladies, white hair, just as cute as they could be. And they would say, well, hey, Ron, could you help with the printer? And could you help with this? And within a couple of months, I was done sealing envelopes and I was just doing tech stuff. And then at the end of my second semester, they pulled me aside. I couldn't believe this. And if you work for the university, you are eligible for sort of leftover funds, or at least you were back then. And they came to me and surprised me and said that they had applied for me to get all of my tuition paid for that year. And they essentially wiped away $6,000 in, late 80s debt, completely out of the blue. It really changed my life. It was amazing, amazing women.
Well, and I've heard you tell the story that you were done with computer science your senior year. You were just like, I guess, you were ready to be done. But you still had 2 electives, and you picked an elective in AI.
Yes. Which,
again, I had no idea that in 92 anybody was even talking about AI.
Yeah.
And you took an AI course.
Yeah, I did. So I had just like 6 hours to graduate. And you're right, I was really burned out. As much as I loved computers, the curriculum was so deep and complicated that I was burned out. And I entered that last semester not sure if I was going. I knew I'd probably stay in tech, but I didn't know if I was going to necessarily go into software. Took a course on AI, and it changed my life. I mean, within 2-3 weeks of being in that course, my eyes were open. This is what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I ended up, eventually going to grad school at Sussex and mastering in artificial intelligence, and obviously working it now. But I just had an amazing thing happen. So Professor Risto Mikalainen, who is a computer science professor here at the University of Texas, and has been since 1990.
Whoa!
When he was like 29. So this is amazing. So Risto Mikalainen, professor at UT, he came on the podcast, the Hidden Layers podcast, and I'm asking him about AI, and it came up about when I took the course, and it wasn't clear if maybe he was my professor. And so I literally this week went and pulled my transcript. And he wasn't.
He wasn't.
He wasn't. There were 2 professors back then that were teaching it. And what's really interesting is I always, in my mind's eye, had thought that the course was like AI 101, Introduction to AI. It was even more granular. It was just called neural networks, which today within AI, that's almost everything that we do within artificial intelligence now that is things that you're aware of, everything from ChatGPT to computer vision algorithms, all of those are neural network based. Mm-hmm. So this was in 92. I was doing a course on neural networks, and I felt I was late. I thought maybe I wasn't smart enough, and I was definitely maybe too late that they had it all figured out.
Right. And you were definitely not.
And I definitely was not. You were
definitely not. I mean, I would say that y'all were still early adopters.
Yes, because by the early 2000s with the .com bubble and everything, mm-hmm. If you had a computer science degree and a master's in AI and $3, that would get you a cup of coffee. Nobody cared about AI back then. Nobody cared.
So when you graduated, KUNGFU, and is it KUNGFU.AI or is it just KUNGFU.AI?
I just always say KUNGFU.AI.
Okay, so KUNGFU.AI, you started in 2018, and we'll talk about that because that was a part of our Longhorn 100, fastest growing Longhorn company, and it's what you do a lot of work with today.
Yes.
But when you left, what did you think you were going to do? Immediately go into what?
When I left
college,
when I left my undergrad, I knew I wanted to go to grad school.
Okay.
And so, but everybody had told me take a break, go make a little money, go get some experience. So I took 3 years off, and then I went to grad school at Sussex in England. And the reason I went to Sussex was because they had a dual curriculum where they focused on not just neural networks and techniques like that, but they also had what's called evolutionary computing, which is something that Risto is famous for. And this is the idea of borrowing elements from natural selection and the idea of recombining traits mm-hmm. like genome, like DNA, to evolve solutions.
Okay.
And Sussex was a world leader there. And when I came out of that, I was like, all right, world, I'm ready. I've got my master's in AI, and just nobody cared because the field had overpromised for so many years. And so our aspirations were always very, very, very much beyond what we could actually deliver. And that didn't really change until about 10 years ago.
And so in that time from graduating, getting your master's before you started this company, I mean, you are a founder of a lot of different companies, but were you just hopping around gathering knowledge? What was during that time? What did you get really good at?
That's a great question. I look back and I feel like a lot of the things that were sort of random or happenstance ultimately were exactly the things I needed to happen.
Always happens that way.
It's crazy, right? That they were exactly the things that needed to happen to put me in a position that I am now. And a great example would be, as frustrated as I was in the early 2000s that, AI wasn't something I could do every day. I got a ton of experience building real production grade software, building products and putting them out into the real world. And so now when we help our clients build AI systems, if you build an AI model, it's not like that you're done. You have to wrap it into a product. You have to deploy it. You have to have an interface, and you have to think about how users want to interact with that. And so that prepared me just so perfectly to be able to go beyond the AI and be able to build systems that can actually be used in the real world.
So in 2018, it was you and 3 other guys that decided to start. They did not go to UT. You're the only Longhorn.
I'm the only Longhorn.
But you guys started KUNGFU.AI here in Austin in 2018. And what was the goal?
The goal was we were all deeply convinced that, and so 2 of the founders were technical.
Okay.
And 2 non-technical.
You're technical.
And I was one of the technical. I'm the CTO, and my other co-founder on the technical side, Zizi Sai, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life, just unbelievable AI engineer. We were both deeply convinced that AI was about to take off, and the world just wasn't quite aware. And then our non-technical founders, Steve Meyer and Steven Strauss, they had the same conviction on the business side. And so we knew that there was this revolution coming. And the thesis was companies aren't going to know how to embrace AI. This is going to be complicated. They're going to need help. It's not like building a website. It's not like building a mobile app. It's much, much more complicated and tricky. And we thought there was a perfect sort of business market opportunity for us to be an AI services company, help companies figure out their AI strategy and build solutions.
Was this slow going at first? Like crickets in the sense of, hey, we're going to help you with AI. And it wasn't a trending word at the time.
That's a great question. It was nothing like now where it's just blowing up, right? AI is, even if you wanted to get away from the news around AI, you couldn't, right?
Correct.
We're just inundated. Back then it was early adopters. It was people that were trying to solve really hard problems, and they tried everything else that they could, and there were really no solutions. So people in the beginning would come to us and say, hey, this may be crazy, but could we use AI to solve this computer vision problem? And almost invariably the answer was yes. Now we get a lot of clients that are like, they assume AI can solve anything, or it's omniscient, or it's error-free. The pendulum swung the entire other way. I
was looking at your website and I thought this was interesting. And you have a whole timeline for your company, and it says started January 22nd, 2018. And then on January 24th, you turned away your first client for ethical reasons. That's right. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting that you would put that on your website. What's the story behind that? Yeah. Because then later you talk about on your timeline, which again, you don't have, it's not like a crazy populated timeline. You're very careful about what you put on there, but then you also talk about your ethics charter drafted in 2020. So I'm like, okay, y'all are saying something about ethics, but why would you say you turned away the first one for ethics?
We knew, how powerful AI was even at that time, but we also knew that a lot of people had a misconception that, let's say you build an AI system to do loan decisioning, decide who gets a loan, who doesn't get a loan. Well, pretty much all AI systems today are built by training on existing data. And so what that means is if you have biased data, historically biased data, and you train a model on that data, it will replicate that biased behavior. And the problem is, still to this day, most people don't know that. and they would interpret the model's decisions as being completely objective. Like, I'm sorry if the model turned you down, I'm sure it had a great reason.
That you can't get a loan because the model says so. Yeah.
Exactly. You live on the wrong side of town. You can't get a loan. And so we wanted to be very, very, very careful on the ethical front and really surface this. And the client that we turned away actually came to us and wanted help building a weapon system, essentially like an AI automated weapon tracking system. And that's just something we were not interested in.
Oh, interesting. And who was your first client?
Our very, very first client was actually Keller Williams.
Okay.
And they, we did a small project with them in 2018, huge success. And then we signed a multi-year engagement and did a bunch of great stuff with them. And they're another, Austin success story.
And do you guys, it feels like you focus on all industries.
Yeah.
I mean, is there an industry you don't, you're not so much focused on one, you're focused on all?
Yeah, we really are. And we every year we think, do we need to pick, do we need to specialize? But it's such early days in AI adoption that it hasn't felt appropriate yet. So we're doing everything from like low orbit satellite tracking for NASA to cancer risk prediction to, insurance claims predictions. I mean, just, all over the place. Okay.
So let's go over that again. The breast cancer thing. I know y'all have done something this past year with the department, the DOD, like you help boards. You have a program to help boards who need to have oversight into AI in their company. And then I know you specifically worked on one for breast cancer. So you have a company that came to you and you helped build an AI platform that is going to help detect breast cancer 5 years faster.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm most proud about that we've accomplished at KUNGFU.AI. This was a company that was founded by a world-renowned radiologist, the head of radiology at Mass General, and it was a sort of a proof of concept that Mass General and MIT had done together, and they wanted to see if they could actually commercialize it. Would it be possible to build this at scale? And the model that we built, and it took years, and it just was approved by the FDA.
Years meaning what? Y'all started a decade?
We started in 21.
Okay, 21.
And with this model, what's really interesting about it, it does not detect breast cancer. It does something actually much more complicated. It looks at x-rays, at mammograms, and it can predict with crazy high accuracy the likelihood that a woman will develop breast cancer 5 years in advance. And what I'm still amazed about this is it's only looking at the x-ray. There is no additional metadata. So it is picking up like visual biological signs of nascent breast cancer. That is not there. Like if you showed a radiologist the x-ray, they would say there's nothing to worry about. And this model can say, no, you are at low risk, or maybe you're at very high risk of breast cancer, because there are cues. And this model, as we were training it, this is how powerful AI is. So we're training this on terabytes of data that we've collected from around the world. We wanted to make sure it was very sort of neutral from a bias perspective. It did not care what your race, age, health was. It just was focused on predicting the risk of breast cancer.
Yeah.
Well, these models are so powerful they'll cheat. Okay, and it's very common if you do a mammogram and something looks suspicious, they'll typically have you go to a better quality center. Right, you'll go get a follow-on mammogram at a location with probably better imaging quality. Well, a problem with that is these AI systems will actually pick up on that. Instead of detecting and looking visually for signs of cancer, they'll just learn that cancer correlates with people that go to higher quality machines over time.
Meaning if it's a higher quality machine, then you must have cancer?
That you are probably more likely to have cancer. And so we collaborated with Stanford on some of this to make sure that that the model wasn't cheating. And we found that the model, even though we didn't ask it to, could accurately predict age, weight, blood pressure, and even ethnicity.
From that picture.
From the pictures. And so we actually changed the model architecture to punish the model. If the model could predict any of those and other facts about the patient, we would actually punish it and would get a lower score. And so ultimately the model was not able to do better than guess around those metrics. And that's one of the reasons the model is so accurate.
So the FDA has approved it.
It just was approved.
So like, how are we going to be seeing that as a consumer? Like, I haven't had my mammogram this year, but like, how do I advocate? And I know that you aren't the company, but how would I even advocate so that they can use this AI model?
Patients are going to be seeing more and more things like this. I was recently just at the doctor, and there was the ability to do like sort of an AI scan, and this will be one of those options.
Whoa.
So you'll go to get your annual mammogram, and one of the options will be, hey, would you like to pay some amount of money? It's not a lot of money. Would you like to pay a little bit of extra money for a 5-year AI breast cancer screening risk prediction?
And you stand by that, like you for sure, it works.
We exceeded our highest goals. I'm really proud to say, and I will say this too. I had never gone through a de novo application with the FDA, and this is the highest bar you go over. And I have so much more respect for the FDA now, having gone through it. They didn't require just that the model was accurate. They also required that it was calibrated. And what that means is if it said you had a high risk of cancer and it said like 65%, you couldn't have actually like a 40% or 90%. It actually had to be about 65%. It had to be calibrated. And most AI models out in the world are not calibrated like that.
This is so exciting because Olivia Munn is an actress who has been very like out there talking about breast cancer because it was her doctor that said, hey, just take this. It's a checklist that I can do where it's like, did you have a child? What age did you have a child? Very basic questions. Yes. And that's so crazy that was what caused her doctor to just say, hey, let's go have more tests. Yep. And it doesn't feel very scientific, honestly.
No, and that test was almost certainly the Tyrer-Cuzick metric, which goes all the way back to the early 90s. It's known to be very, very biased towards white women because the population that they built it on was based on that. And so this model that we're talking about is it's like a quarter century leap into the future.
That's cool. Because also, not to like just only talk about mammograms, but like I think I went one time and the tech, very nice, but she was like, what is that? And it was because the camera wasn't working well, but I'm sitting there like, what do you mean? She's like, what is that? And then she had to bring somebody in. What is that? And I was like,
yeah, and you're
oh my
freaking
God, why is this the worst experience ever? Because also the graphics they get but anyway, it's really cool.
I'm unbelievably excited about how healthcare is going to be transformed with the AI. We're at incredibly early stages. In fact, I've got to plug the BioML group here at UT. Rather, this is the essentially biology machine learning group here at UT. It's a student-led organization.
Okay.
A bunch of great biology PhD students, and they held a hackathon last year, and we were part of that. And they used open source AI models that can predict protein folding from amino acid sequences. And I can't give away the final results because they're going to announce it probably next month. But this was to identify amino acid sequence that would code for a protein that would then elicit sort of T cell responses for cancer. This was all done with open source software. On a weekend, and the results are looking fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we're moving to a place now where, with the AI capabilities that we have now, we're doing things that 5 years ago would have truly been inconceivable.
So when you go to a party and someone comes up to you and they're like, "Hey, what do you do?" and you're like, "I work in AI," is the number one question, "Is AI taking my job?"
Probably the number one or number two question, it's either when is the Terminator coming, and is AI going to take my job? And I always joke, I say, look, AI is coming for all of our jobs eventually, right? And it's ironic in the most supreme way that programming, computer science, is probably one of the most disrupted jobs already because AI coding agents are incredibly powerful now. We use them at work all the time. Everybody I know in software is using these agents. My youngest son is a computer science major. He's a senior right now, and he's like, Dad, what am I going to graduate and not be able to get a job?
That's
like,
what I have a coworker here, and she's like, her son is a freshman or sophomore at AT. He's like, I'm not going to go into computer science. There won't be any jobs.
There's not going to be any jobs. And I do think, if you look out 25 years, I do think 99% of software will be AI generated.
Mm-hmm.
We're making incredible progress. I don't think that's going to be the case in the next 5 years, but I would say probably 0.25% of the software that is being generated now with the people I know, and including people, even at Google, is AI generated right now, and then human reviewed.
You give a lot of talks on the state of AI. What's like the number one thing for businesses to take away, and the number one thing for just average person like me who sometimes uses ChatGPT but also hates it?
Yeah.
I actually don't like it, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, on the business side, it's a couple things. And I repeat this over and over again because it's such early days. Businesses need to hear this.
Still early days, right?
It's extremely early
because
days.
Everybody's popping up as an AI expert now. Right?
Right.
Everybody's an AI consultant. Everybody's going to help guide your company through AI.
Every product's an AI product.
Every product's an AI product in your company, and you're like, well, I know I'm supposed to do it, but where do I start and who do I talk to?
Right. And that's literally why we exist. It's don't panic. We can help you figure out your strategy. We can actually even help you execute on that strategy and build AI models. But the number one thing we do is we encourage companies to, as much as possible, really do 3 things. Focus on your own proprietary data. Don't go build AI systems just to say that you can do that. If a great example would be to go spend a bunch of money to build a chatbot to streamline your help desk. There are products you can buy off the shelf, right? Don't go invest time and money in building something that doesn't give you a competitive, differentiated advantage. But if you can use your own proprietary data, and this is what we do with our clients all the time, you can build AI capabilities or predictive systems that can give you massive advantage compared to your competitors. So the 3 pieces of advice are: focus on your differentiated data. Don't go crazy and just do AI to say you did AI and check a box and do a moonshot. And start slow and get buy-in within your company. Once you have a couple of wins under your belt, we see it over and over again that companies get confident and that AI becomes sort of baked in to who they are in a positive way, and it becomes less of this sort of esoteric threat.
Okay. How am I supposed to use it?
And then
how do you use ChatGPT?
I use chat all the time.
Why do you use it?
So I'm not coding as much anymore. If I was coding, I would be using it even more. The AI coding agents are incredible. But I'm using ChatGPT for everything from helping me, fix typos, summarize, do research. You can put these language models in research mode, and ask it incredibly complicated questions like go analyze the last 5 years of financials for this sector. As I'm going to go talk to a company, I want to get up to speed on their space. I can have it go do a week's worth of work, come back in 20, 30 minutes with up to 5, 6, 7-page report. Things like that were unimaginable just a few years ago. And of course, if you're a student, there's nothing.
We know.
There's nothing it can't help you with. So, but on an individual basis, use it as you want to. I really don't think anybody should be compelled to. You don't want to have a smartphone, don't have a smartphone. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think I've been very slow. I don't know why. I was the obnoxious girl in high school that if somebody said that they did Cliff Notes, I'd be like, ugh.
Yeah.
I like to do it the hard way. I'm like, I stayed up all night reading it, highlighting it, rewriting it, underlining it.
It's a crutch you don't want to use. I just think about it as it's just a tool. It's just a tool, and you can use it or not use it.
Yeah. How are you constantly staying on top of things? So I was talking to you, we had a civil engineer company in here, and they were talking about how slow civil engineering is. It doesn't change quickly. They love change, but concrete and asphalt are what are on top of parking lots, and that's what's going to be on top of parking lots forever.
Yeah.
How do you constantly learn?
I would definitely tell anybody even thinking about going to computer science or software, if you are not interested in continually learning and just constant change, pick a different career. And that is doubly true of AI. It is moving so fast right now. I spend probably 10 to 12 hours a weekend reading papers and watching videos just to stay up to date. And we actually did something recently at KUNGFU.AI, maybe about 3 years ago. We were struggling so hard to stay up to date with all the changes. And we were asking, our engineers to work all day and then go home and read white papers so that we could be at the bleeding edge, state of the art for our clients. We actually instituted something radical, which is Fridays we call lab day. There's no client work. We focus exclusively on learning. So we have guest lecturers come in, read white papers together. We work with new frameworks, or we do proof of concepts. It's basically, we have to take about 20% of our, essentially 20% of our billable capacity and set it aside just to stay up to date on AI. That's how fast it's moving.
Crazy.
It's really crazy.
Was that hard to convince? 20% of bill. Yeah, I mean
It
that
was
when
tough.
you
When you put it like that, it's tough. And we were also concerned. Well, what will our clients think if we're not going to be working on their projects on Friday? But we say, we're very open about this. This is something we have to do so that we can do the good work that they expect from us.
I mean, that's awesome. So back to UT. I like to ask what your favorite place to grab food was when you were a student on campus.
Yeah, no question. I don't know if they have those still. Do they have the egg roll trucks around campus?
I don't know. Do they have the egg roll trucks? Well, we have two that are incoming freshmen, so they don't know yet. I've seen a couple. There's different food trucks, and they shift.
Okay. I spent all of my disposable food income on egg roll trucks.
Okay.
and if I really somehow came into some money, there was a Texadelphia, which is gone. It was here for ages, but there was
really good.
Texadelphia on the drag or the quad.
It was for those who don't know. I mean, it was a big Philadelphia like sandwich, but with queso.
Exactly. That was amazing. So if I could afford that, I would do that. Those were my two go-tos.
Okay. And then favorite professor?
Oh, no question. Dr. Brumfield. He really was amazing. So my, I think it was my junior year, I was taking operating systems. Okay. And I remember about halfway through, I went in and I was talking to him and I was like, oh, so, does this work like this? And he was like, no, you got it backwards. And I was like, oh, okay. But then that means this other thing must work like this. And he was like, no, you got that wrong. And I said something like, oh, well, I guess in 20 years, once I've been doing this as long as you, I'll understand everything. And he was like, no, Ron, none of us understand everything. Like, don't worry. It's incredibly complicated. Just keep moving forward and you'll be fine. And that was amazing to me because it really took a lot of pressure off. I felt like I had to understand how every part of the computer worked, and he disabused me of that, that folly of trying to become an expert in everything. And it was okay not to know stuff. He was amazing.
Well, yeah, especially in this space, like you can't know everything.
No.
If you tried, you would never sleep.
Exactly.
Ever.
Absolutely. Never.
And then, what's some advice you give to a freshman entering University of Texas, which we have a couple here today watching?
Yeah.
What's your advice?
I would say, it's very rare that you're 17 or 18 and you know what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that's okay, right? That's really, really okay. I really believe in sort of that blend of STEM and liberal arts. Get a diverse education. Don't focus too hard in one area. Come out of your undergrad having taken a bunch of classes and get exposure to different areas. One of my favorite courses, hands down, was I took a course on American diplomacy in the 20th century. It had nothing to do with computer science. It's one of my fondest memories of UT. So just don't put too much pressure on yourself. You'll figure things out and take a broad spectrum of classes.
But hopefully you don't get called by the dean that you have to change majors.
Don't get kicked out of your major like I did.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to let them ask some questions, then we'll do a little hook 'em horns at the end. Does anybody have a question? No pressure if you don't. I feel like you do. And then just kind of put the mic kind of close to you, but my back is a lot, so that's why I'm walking
Hi, thank you so much for coming today.
Oh,
My
my
name is
pleasure.
Emma. I'm a sophomore at UT. And I wanted to talk about, as college students, we face a lot of pressure and uncertainty about what we want to do and having it figured out and
Yeah.
competing for internships and jobs. And I wanted to know how you kept trust and confidence in yourself that things were going to work out, that you were going to be okay, and that you should keep going on the path you were on.
Oh, that's such a great question. Things are so much more challenging, I think, for students now than when I was in school. When I was in school, I was working part-time and could largely pay for my education, which is inconceivable now. And I think because it was so much less expensive, there was less pressure to quote, get it right, you know? And so um, I think that this is very much in line with what I just said about diversity. We didn't really do a lot of internships. I was always working summer jobs. It was just silly stuff. I was working at a restaurant or, a clothing store. Kids today do internships that are related to the jobs that they're thinking about exploring. And I've seen over and over again that the really positive impact that can have.
Thank you. You're doing so much for us because you're coming and doing a chat with us too. And
No, this is fantastic. Thank
but
you for having me.
we appreciate you and being involved with the University of Texas and Texas Exes. So
Thank
hook 'em
you.
horns.
Hook 'em horns.